Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a terrific guest. This is somebody I've really looked up to over the years because he's really successful and he seems to have found a great work-life balance. He is a successful entrepreneur who owns not one but several restaurants, one of which is new to town and just opened, and I'm so excited about that. But he's also a family man, a well-respected person. He's been a public servant, so much more. Just a great guy. And so with no further ado, I bring to you Jimmy Gregory, the owner of the BBQ Station. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking time away from your beautiful family and all that you have going on with restaurants seemingly in every corner of Southeast Louisiana and to be with us. Why don't we kick things off with you just telling our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself?
I'm a local guy, born and raised here in Ponchatoula Parish. I live in Independence, still live in Independence. It's my hometown. Like I said, born there, raised there. I'm a graduate of Independence High School. Spent some time, at Southeastern and ended up graduating culinary school from Baton Rouge. Married, like I said, wife, 2 kids, Chastity, Roger. She's from Tickfaw. We don't hold that against her, though. She's been in this for a long time. And I have two children. Lexi's 22 and just started practicing as a nurse. And
cool.
I have a son who's turns 14 next week, and he goes to Oak Forest out there in A-Meet. And he's
wow. Well, that's neat. Well, speaking of birthdays and independence, today is my beautiful bride's. One thing we share in common, Jimmy, one reason I like you is we both outkicked our coverage, right? Our wives are beautiful and talented and way too good for us. And mine's birthday is this week, about a week ahead of you and your boy. And because I know y'all share a birthday. And anyway, she's from Independence like you, Independence High and all that. So it's neat to have you here. That's a town that's, special to me because I spend a lot of Sundays there with her family. And anyway, it's right up the road. Well, tell us a little, you mentioned kind of born and bred, that way. Tell us what life was like for you growing up. We are eventually going to get into the story of the incredible success of the BBQ Station and your career as a chef and all that. But just tell us what childhood was like for you.
I spent a lot of time as a child. My parents both worked full time, as most parents do.
Sure.
Back then was no different. Dad worked in the plants, and he was gone a lot. Off doing turnarounds or working here, working in California. When I was a little older, and Mom was a banker, so she worked full time.
My mom was too. That's cool.
Community State Bank back then, and so I spent a lot of time inadvertently. Spent a lot of time with my grandparents.
Right.
So my maternal grandmother, I spent a lot of time with her, and I really spent a lot of time in the kitchen. Her and my grandfather, they both cooked a lot. When I was a child growing up, especially my grandparents' home, cooking wasn't like a task of the man or the woman. I really feel like it was equally shared, and especially in my grandparents' home. Now, my dad, not so much. My dad wasn't a big cook. He fried you an egg for breakfast. Outside of that,
my dad too. For those that know Sheriff Layrisson, he was a breakfast man too.
That's it.
Bacon and eggs all day. But he wasn't going to make you any etouffee or lasagna or anything like that.
No. So basically, I spent all my time as a child in my grandmother's kitchen, and I always loved, whenever we would have family get-togethers, I hate to say it, but a lot of the men would be in the living room watching football or Sunday dinner and stuff, and I would inadvertently be in the kitchen. And the thing that probably, I say, chaps my dad the most now, looking back at it, he would scream and how my mom would get mad because I was underneath her feet. She's moving around the kitchen. I'm underneath her feet, and she's trying to work, and my grandmother's trying to work, and my dad would scream at me. He said, "Get out the kitchen, you washwoman." He called me a washwoman all the time. He called me one. And how ironic is it now that I make my living, in a kitchen with food? Not only just me.
That's great. What did he say when you said you were going to culinary school? That had to be a deal.
I have not that many people realize I have a younger brother too, Kevin Gregory, who's actually executive chef here at the Oaks and general manager here at the Oaks in Ponchatoula. He actually attended the same culinary school I did. So, you end up with 2 washwomen.
Yeah, that's funny, man. That's a great story. Well, speaking of independence, we've got one of our viewers has chimed in, Justin Sharp. Justin, thank you for watching the show. And Justin says his father's from Independence too. He loves the food and the Indy location. Been there many times. And he says, Jimmy, to you, congrats on the new spot. Ponchatoula is hyped about it. And he's right about that. I mean, we've been in my family through my in-laws enjoying the BBQ Station for years and years. You've been up there in Independence forever. And it seems to be the go-to spot. If there's a family birthday, graduation, whatever, you got that great big room in the back and everybody can spread out. But really, it's all about the food. The cooking is tremendous, from the barbecue to the sides, you name it. And I've learned here recently, since I joined the TARC board, y'all do the catering for our board meetings. You have great salads and all that stuff too. So I'm just doing a teaser here. We'll get to your food later, but it is kind of neat to see you coming to Ponchatoula. Our town's very excited. I know you just opened up here, and I'm going to ask you about that in a bit. So I promise to you, Justin, I will circle back to that because I can tell you're excited about it, and I know that many other listeners are. But right now, we're still in the family section. And speaking of family, one of our best guests ever, and one of TARC's best assets, Miss Robin Abrams, well known from the school board, but really best known for the very special Miss Louisiana pageant, which she founded and runs. And she's just kind of our guru there at TARC, and just somebody I've always looked up to a lot. She said that this Nana is really proud of you, Jimmy, and you have a lot of your daddy's passion. So that's got to mean a lot to you coming from such a tremendous woman. Tell me about your aunt. You mentioned growing up, mom, dad are working a lot. You're with your grandparents. I know you have a special relationship with your Aunt Robin. Why don't you tell us a little bit about her?
We do. She's my aunt. She's my godmother as well. Like I said, I stayed a lot with my grandparents as a child, and she's actually a good bit younger than my mother. So she was still in high school when I was there as a child. She kind of raised me a little bit. I was real little, and she was still living at the house, and so I guess our relationship, at the end of the day, she's my aunt, but our relationship is more closer, I guess, more like a brother and a sister would be than an aunt and uncle, an aunt and a nephew. We're just close. I mean, and you don't really realize, I guess, how close you are to somebody if you sit there and start analyzing things.
Yeah, I bet.
She's been there my whole life, and grew up literally like she was there when I was always there.
Like a big sis. No, I get it. And what a blessing to have someone like that, because let's face it, we don't choose our family, and so many people are plagued with terrible home lives, and no good parents, no good grandparents, etc. And here you've got kind of these strong influences in all directions. But what a blessing to have her not only as your aunt, but like you say, to be close enough in age where y'all could really be almost like sister and brother. So, Robin, thank you for watching the show. Thank you for giving of your busy schedule to be on the show. Your interview was one of my favorites ever. Folks, we are here with Jimmy Gregory, owner of the BBQ Station, and we're just kind of going through his childhood now. He's been talking to us a little bit about growing up in Independence, and eventually he and his brother go off to culinary school. They become chefs. Tell us about that, Jimmy. I mean, you mentioned earlier you didn't go straight into culinary school, straight into cooking. You went to college first. So what was that journey like, if you will?
I graduated Independence High, and then, of course, everybody says, well, I'm going to go to college. The majority of people say, we'll try college out. I got into college. I was about 3 semesters deep, and I actually, ironically, Parker, I was going to school for pre-law. I'd be a good lawyer.
Well, you made the right call, man. I can tell you. I won't bore you with my tale of woe, but yeah, I think you picked a better career.
So, it was about 3 semesters in, and had some life-changing events, took place. A couple things happened. I lost my grandfather, Robin's father, my grandfather. Yeah. We lost him. He was a big component of my life, and it hit me pretty hard. In the midst of all that, I found I was going to be a father.
Wow.
I found I was going to be a father, and I just didn't see me being able to finish college, in the sense of, a few more semesters of pre-law, and then, law school and all that. I can't do this. This is not going to work. And I need to figure out a plan of something I can do in a relatively short period of time and still make a good living. And, I've seen so many older people that they do what they do for a paycheck. They go to work every day for a paycheck. They're good at their jobs. They work hard, but they do what they do for a paycheck, and that's it. And at the end of the day, what are they?
And by that, are you kind of talking about the lack of passion for what they do? Are you getting at? They don't love what they do. They just do it because, like you, they became fathers or mothers, and they had families to support. And to do that, we have to make a living. But is that what you're talking about, or
Yes,
do you
sir.
need something
Yes,
else?
sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just want to make sure I was clear.
So I seen all that going on with, like I said, with my dad and his friends and older people in my life, and say I don't want that.
Right.
I said, what can I be an old man and still be able to do? Because we're going to be old one day. And I said, what can I be an old man and still be able to do?
Hey, you still look young, but you look at this gray in my beard. I'm getting there quick, man.
I shaved it off where I came. It's terrible. But something I said I can, be an old man and still do is, I always went to these restaurants when I was a kid, and there was always like an old guy in the corner. And he set the table in the corner. He set the round table. You didn't know what his role was in the restaurant or what he did, but he had something to do with owning the place. And all he did was sit there and drink coffee, wave at people. And I said, I want to be that guy. I want to be that old guy in the corner.
You're speaking my love language right now, because for me, growing up, that was Mr. JT Gazzardo out of Independence. I'm sure know well.
Exactly.
I worked for him all through high school. At Hi-Ho, at his Hammond location and his Ponchatoula location. And you're right, that's what he'd do. He'd come in the morning, and this is before they even served breakfast officially at Hi-Ho. He'd drink coffee with his buddies, and he'd be out. Miss Celeste would be running the show all day, and he had, other managers. But yeah, that's a great gig if you can get it. I like that.
Yeah, he's actually one of the men that, you ironically mentioned, he's one of the men I thought about.
He was great to me, a wonderful boss.
You had Johnny DeMarco, those guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
These are restaurants I ate as a kid. And I said, I want to be that guy. I want to be that. And I know it didn't just happen overnight for that person. So I said, you know what? I eventually want to be in the restaurant business. So I'm going to go to culinary school. I'm going to go ahead and go to culinary school, and I'm going to get into the restaurant business. And I dabbled in a little bit of stuff. And I was always, even growing up, like, we had to get out of school early or something. I was always the guy that cooked. Like, we all go to my house and cook. I had before any intention to be in the restaurant business or culinary degree. I was always the person whose house we went to and who cooked. That was always my
So you're
role.
talking about even like as a kid, high school, if somebody's going to make a grilled cheese, it was you. You weren't going to let your buddy burn the toast. You were going to make sure it was done right.
We skipped school in a half a day and go pile up in the house and just couldn't fry nothing. Mama didn't let me fry in the house. But anything else, half days
Smart
school,
lady.
anything like that, we're cooking. At the beach barbecuing, I'm barbecuing. I was always doing that. So I said, I'm going to stop going to college, get out of college, get out of Southeastern. I'm going to culinary school. So in between college and culinary school, my dad at the time was a pretty big high up with Turner. And I said, Dad, I'm going to culinary school and dropping out of college, which obviously he didn't like that. He wanted me to go to school and not do what he did for a living. And I said, well, Dad, I need to go, I need to make me some money because I need to save up a little bit of money before I go to school because I'm not going to be able to work that much at first. So I said, set me up on something. He said, I'll tell you what. So you go pay your deposits, pay all your enrollment fees, show me you're enrolled in schoal. I'll set you up on some turnarounds. And he did. He put me about 3 or 4 turnarounds back to back. And, I'm 20 years old.
Yes, full pockets at that point. Yeah, you make some good money on a turnaround.
Oh, yeah, making great money. They're doing 7-12. But look, I'm making money. I didn't have time to spend it. After about 2 months of that, I figured, it's nice. I like the money, but it's not something I want to do. And my dad did that on purpose. He could have gave me the best job in the plant. He could have put me in a tool shed. He could have put me doing anything. No, he had me as a laborer working for the scaffold builders. And if anybody knows anything about working in the plants, scaffold builders work hard. Those guys are hardworking guys. And I was working beneath them, basically doing the stuff they didn't want to do, which is, it was rough.
Yeah, no, it's smart daddy. Clearly his plan worked.
Oh, 100%. It broke me of that. 100% it broke me of that. And
you mentioned your parents, your dad working in the plant, your mom in the bank, but they were also entrepreneurs. And I just asked that because I recall them having a tie to Ponchatoula here. Didn't they own businesses here in Ponchatoula at one time? Tell us about that.
It's not the first time that the Gregory family is
in
Ponchatoula. Back in the early 80s, early 80s. my parents were partners in Ponchatoula Fitness.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's an iconic local business.
Yeah. Now we're talking about way back when it was behind the Curb Market.
Yeah,
I think
school.
the building's still there. And I remember being at the Curb Market, and then they moved it to the new building, which is tore down now, the one where the racetrack's at.
Right.
And then they had the
strip mall, right?
Yeah, it had a little strip mall right there. It had Ponchatoula Fitness,
well.
and then we had Action Video right next to it. And again, this is in the early 80s. And I remember just, having a video store, and I think I watched every Kung Fu movie they had in the video store back then. And, I remember used to be able to rent a VHS player. You couldn't. Everybody had one. So you go out and you could rent a movie, and you could go rent the.
You could rent that, and you know what else you could rent over there was a Nintendo.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, I only know that because my parents would never buy us a Nintendo when we were kids. So Bree and I had to hope that one of the rentals was available.
There you go. But
yeah, neat. So those of us like my brothers and I who grew up running the mean streets of Ponchatoula, we can relate to those businesses you're talking about. Because that John's Curb Market, I'll never forget when Mom and Dad started letting us ride our bike that far. And that was a big deal. It opened up a lot of opportunities for little kids that wanted to get candies and stuff like that. So that's cool. So yeah, so you guys have been through Ponchatoula before, which is one takeaway from that. But the other is, while your dad had that good, solid job at the plant and your mom had that steady job at the bank, there was an entrepreneurial spirit in them that seems to have passed down to you. This definitely. Own your own thing, be your own boss. Kind of. Am I right there, or am I on to something?
100%. It's easier said than done.
Well, what did you learn from them in that part of their life? Because you mentioned the great lesson your dad taught you at the plants. What did they teach you through owning businesses and being entrepreneurs?
Well, I can tell you, my mother always prided herself on having good credit. Being in the banking industry, she was one of these people that always paid the bills ahead of time, never on time. If it's on time, it's late in her book.
Right.
So I guess fiscal responsibility was always instilled for me from a young age, by my mother more than my father. Dad just worked, sent the checks home to Mom, and she, being in the banking business, she was the one that handled the money inadvertently.
That's how it was at our house too.
So he instilled in me good values with marketing. Managing money and budgeting, and not living outside your means. Right. But it was definitely, definitely a lot, with that. And then Dad, he always worked. Dad never not had a job. We never did without. And my dad, busted his butt to provide for, me and my brother, and to make sure that we had everything that he never had growing up.
Right.
My dad wanted to make sure we had that and then some, and he did. He provided, for us like I didn't realize how lucky I was till I was older. And that's when you don't realize. You start thinking that the way you lived was normal. And as you get a little older, you realize that, we weren't wealthy by no means, but we didn't do without anything. And then you realize that you had friends that you thought lived like you, and they didn't. They lived different. You didn't realize it, Yeah. You didn't treat them any different, but just growing up older, you didn't realize that. So you get, you start seeing it for yourself, and it's the disparity among things.
Well, let's talk about your brother. You mentioned you have a brother. He followed, your path into becoming a chef. What was the age gap there, and what was that like?
He's 10 years younger than me.
Oh wow, that's a good healthy gap. You guys weren't probably fist fighting every day like Bree and I were growing up. 10 years old. Yeah, that's a good. Okay.
Yeah, cool. He's considerably younger than me. By the time I moved out when I was a month before I turned 18 years old. I moved out. Okay. So no, for no particular reason. It was just I was always an independent person. It was time to go. So I moved out right before I turned 18. So he's 10 years younger than me. So he was 7, 8 years old when I moved out. So we never really had I guess as children we never had that I guess that brotherhood kind of camaraderie, because it was never, we didn't really, by the time he got old enough to do stuff, it was different, and then when he did get older.
I can relate. My older brother's 12 years older than I am and 18 years older than my youngest brother. So, when your brother moves out, when you're in the first grade, or whatever, or in my brother's case, really when you're born, you don't have that kind of same, you and Robin may have been closer and had a closer, kind of experience than that big gap. So that That makes sense. Well, let me ask you this, Jimmy, because you mentioned two things that caught my attention, that impressed me, and I'd love to learn about because it's a little different than my experience. One was becoming a daddy at a young age. I mean, I'm laughing about my gray beards, but my fatherhood journey started late in life, and my boys are still young. Two, moving out at that young age. It sounds like you had to grow up pretty quick and become a man at a young age. Thank God you had such a great example in your own father. But is that true? And if so, what was it like?
When you do things, you don't realize you're doing them. Honestly,
Yeah.
I didn't move out because I wanted to be a man. I didn't, you know, be a father because I had to. I mean, it's just you start doing these things and you just right, you raise up to the occasion and you just do it. When it got to the point when like I said, moved out at a young age, it just got to the point to where I felt like I was ready to make my own rules.
Right.
And didn't want to live under theirs anymore. And not that it was bad or anything like that.
I think we've all been there, right? Yeah, that's common.
I was already out of high school. I have a young birthday, so I was in college, and it wasn't like I moved out in high school. I was out of college already. I was in college already, and I just decided, I don't want to live here no more. I live with my girlfriend. My wife now.
Right. Well, let's talk about, because I know people want to hear about BBQ Station, and I don't want to run out of time before we get there. But let's talk about career transition from culinary school to being I think you were a chef in the city. Tell us a little bit about that, and then how you got the wild hair to come back to Tangipahoa Hill Parish, leave the big city full of all these great restaurants and opportunities to go back to Independence, Louisiana, and do the BBQ Station. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, it was interesting journey. So I worked at a lot of restaurants after I graduated culinary school. Some of them were corporate restaurants, some of them were different types. I had one short stint in fast food, and I'll talk about that. But the majority of restaurants I worked in, even before culinary school or during culinary school, was Italian restaurants. Being my grandmother was full-blood Sicilian, Italian restaurants kind of just came natural to me. I kind of understood the food better, so it was easy for me to do it. So worked in a lot of Italian restaurants, Bravo. I was a sous chef in Bravo in the city. I was culinary manager at Macaroni Grill. I even was a GM at Cane's. Shout out to Todd Graves for a few years. And then so I didn't realize at the time that how important that the time I spent in raising Cane's was going to be to me later in life. Great business model, great company to work for. And I learned a lot about, it was my first time as a general manager when I was at Raising Cane's. So I got to see a little bit more of the books and I guess the nuts and bolts ends of things that before I was just shown a P&L when I was in lower management. But as a GM, this is your P&L. You're responsible for this. You're the one that creates the profit and loss.
Yeah, it's your job to get it right.
So, having that stint with Cane's for a while was a good great experience for me to
well, I'm glad you mentioned the fast food angle because we had one of our best former guests, Perona's Pete Clark, who's now a super successful Allstate agent in Hammond. He worked for years and years in fast food and management at Wendy's and Taco Bell and all these places. And what I learned from him is that fast food chains have got incredible systems, right? I mean, as a chef, you may not respect their food the same way you do, some delicious Italian dish at Bravo or something, but at the same time, the way they run their business is airtight. I mean, they've got everything down to a science. And so what I'm hearing from you is before you get home and open your own restaurant and run it, you kind of get this view into different worlds, right? On one hand, true fine dining. I mean, delicious. And I went to, on my first date with my college girlfriend to Bravo. I love that place. It was wonderful. That was like a show off upscale deal. Cane's on the other end of the spectrum. It's just fast food. It's just chicken fingers, but it's done really well. They always come at you fresh and hot. And I mean, even the lemonade's delicious. So what was that like informing who you are as a present day business owner? And, how did it help you turn the BBQ Station into what it is?
I got to see every aspects of this business. I got to see the small mom and pop. Like I mentioned, I mentioned the DeMarco family. I actually worked for Joni DeMarco.
Cool.
When she had Little Johnny's, had DeMarco's Italian. When they had La Rusticana by the college. Piero had the place here in Ponchatoula for years. I worked for all these small independent restaurants, so I got to see the day-to-day operations and the things that they did great and the things that, I knew could do better. And then when I got to the big restaurants, I got to see how, the corporate world worked in these restaurants and the operation systems. And, first time I really seen a P&L was when I got into a big restaurant. We didn't have P&Ls back then, Mom, at least I didn't see them, I'm not saying
right.
I didn't see them.
No, look, hey, I worked at Idaho long enough to know these local Sicilians kept their books close to the vest. They weren't going to share it with any manager that wasn't in the family.
No, not at all. Not at all. So I got to see all that. And so, I knew one day I wanted to make the jump. I wanted to make the jump to be an owner, but I never knew what the jump was. I didn't know what kind of, and I always said, well, by default, I should own an Italian restaurant because that's the kind of restaurants I've worked in. It's what's kind of expected out of me. It's what I know. By default, I should own an Italian restaurant. That's what we're going to do. One day I'm going to own an Italian restaurant. That's the game plan. So lo and behold, one night we're at a fundraiser. We're actually in downtown Hammond at the mezzanine, and it's a fundraiser. I think it's a re-election thing for Scott Perry.
Okay.
And I'm there, and I think I'm 28 years old at the time. So again, with my Aunt Robin being involved in all her political stuff, and so I started attending a lot of these political type events at a young age.
Right.
So I'm kind of getting in that circle now. I'm starting to know who's who in the community, and going to little things and doing little things. So we're at this fundraiser for Scott, and I see Hunt Ragusa. I don't know if you know Hunt Ragusa. Hunt and Brent Ragusa, they're from Independence. Mm-hmm. Their dad was mayor of Independence at one time.
Right.
Ragusa Brothers Construction, Brunt Construction.
Yeah.
They're like one of the biggest contractors in Tangipahoa Parish. Anyway, so I see Hunt Ragusa, and I start talking to Hunt. I'm like, Hunt, man, I've been calling the restaurant, and they're not answering the phone. And Hunt's like, we're out. They had BBQ Station, Independence. I said, we're out, man. I said, what do you mean you're out? He says, well, Dad's getting ready to run for mayor. Dad, at the time, his dad was running for mayor, Independence.
Yeah, and like you said, they had a lot of irons in the fire. They have a very busy construction company.
That's it. So he said, Dad's getting ready to run for mayor. My brother Brent, who runs the restaurant, said, I need Brent back at the office. We don't have time for it anymore. I'm like, we're at the dump. I said, well, what you going to do with it? Yeah. He says, we're going to sell it. I said, going to sell it? I said, he said, you want to buy it? I said, buy it? I don't know. I said, we're doing a fundraiser type thing, so we're in a different mindset that night. We're in we're celebratory type mindset. We're having a good time. I said, I'll call you on Monday and we'll talk about this. So I went home and I told my wife, and I said, they shut the restaurant down in town. She's like, really? I said, huh? She said, what they gonna do with it? I said, they want to sell it. And I said, they want me to buy it. And she says, what do you know about barbecue? I said, I don't know. I said, I went to culinary school. I guess I'll figure it out. And she's like, okay, all right. So I had a sit down meeting with them. Uh-huh. We met, we walked the building, we discussed the property, and borrowed some money, man, and we bought a restaurant,
off to the races.
Off to the races. So my wife tells me.
So after that initial conversation, she sleeps on it, you sleep on it, you do all that.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned you're 28 years old.
28 years old. I'm young. I'm young.
You're young, doing well, I'm sure, but not really.
I was good. I was a chef. I was making what I considered great money at the time.
Yeah, right. So you're talking about leaving the security of chef at well-established places. There's no worry that the check's coming twice a month or whenever to that. What's that family dynamic like? Because, like, for example, my wife and I met after I had my own firm.
Yeah.
All the leaps of faith I took to get where I am, we're essentially done before I had kids to feed and my wife's input. So what was that like as a married man who'd been with your wife a while? What are conversations like that? How does it go over?
My wife, love her to death, says, well, I'll tell you what, if that's what you want to do, you go ahead and do it. She says, but I'm still going to drive a new car.
Good for Chastity. That's great. She kept it real from day one.
We're still going on family vacation.
Nice.
That was up there too, because you didn't want me to take time away from the family.
Yeah, of course.
And not to backtrack this, my son was just born in September. Yeah. We bought the restaurant in November. So literally we had a 2-month-old child. Right. In addition to, my daughter who's 10 years older than him. Yeah. So we have you got a 9-10-year-old, and I have a 2-month-old. Let's say 12-year-old. Got the gauge gap on myself. So I got a young child, and I got a 10-11-year-old.
Now, yeah, you're starting to remind me of my dad telling me about his decision, to tell my wife he wants to run for sheriff with my brother Bree's a baby, and I'm a toddler. And that was a lot. That was, God bless my mama for going along with it, and your wife for doing the same.
She was behind me. I mean, she was behind me, but she was
like she had your support, but she was smart enough to have some conditions.
Yeah,
we'll get some commitments out of you early, because 100%. You mentioned the vacation thing. I mean, let's face it, it's not just the money of the family that you're putting
time away from work,
but man, your time with your kids is nothing more important. So that's cool that y'all had those priorities straight from Jump Street.
So, and we did. We started off great. My wife had a full-time job. My wife still works full-time. She works for Neal Corporation. Been there 21 years this year. Now my wife works from home since COVID, and so my wife still employed, still works full-time. So we did have that financial stability of knowing that my wife was there, her income was there for us. I said, worst case scenario, baby, we'll sell all the cars, buy some beaters, and keep the lights on. And we'll make it. We'll make it.
Right.
And we did. So we took off running. I ran the restaurant for about a year and a half, and we are just not financially making it. Mm-hmm. When I tell you just not financially making it, and I'm telling my wife, she has no clue how bad it is. It is bad. When I tell you bad, it is bad.
It had to be terrifying. Was it like that from the start, or did it take a dip down, or? What?
You start here, and then you do. And I didn't know at the time. I wasn't prepared for everything that came through. As a young business owner, you don't realize that, you don't think about insurance premiums. You don't think about ad valorem taxes. You don't think about all these components that, as a chef, as a general manager, that you never seen. Yeah, they're on the P&L, but they're not. When you're the guy stroking those checks, it's a big difference, So, and
I think no matter what you do in life, it's the difference between being a well-compensated employee as a professional and an owner. Same applies for attorneys. You could be a very well-compensated lawyer, doctor, whatever, but it's a different ballgame when you're not paying self-employment taxes and dealing with all these responsibilities. I mean, you make a good point there. For us, when I got started, I could have the best case in the world walk in the door, but as an injury attorney, it may not settle for a year, maybe 3 years. And all that while I've got to not only work that case, but win it, I got to fund it. And so, you're investing thousands of dollars that you may not have yet. So I would imagine restaurant business, what I'm hearing is a lot of similar threads to it, right? So you're stuck there in financial dire straits, clearly very guarded with what you tell your wife, because you don't want to worry her. She's got her own.
I made promises. I couldn't break
her own job. So what happens next? Where's the story go?
So finally, she gets a little wise to what's going on, and she knows that we're not really making a lot of money at all, actually. And so I come home, and she's got the newspaper. We used to get the newspaper back then. She's got the newspaper sitting on the counter. And I walk in, she's like, newspaper's on the counter for you. I'm like, okay, I really don't read the newspaper that often. In fact, she told me it was a counter. I thought it was weird. She said, they need bus drivers. I said, do what? Bus drivers? I said, you want me to go, hold up, what? Yeah, you need to go do something. You need to go find another job. I said, this ain't working. You need to go find another job. She said, you could drive a bus. I said, now I like my own kids, don't get me wrong. I love my children. But being a bus driver is not on the top of my list of things to do. But I went and got my CDL, took all my tests, did all my stuff, and I drove a school bus.
Very cool.
For 9 years, I drove a school bus. So my routine started.
That's a big deal here in Ponchatoula. I mean, we've had our chief of police driving a bus. I mean, David Vitter. we've had several bus drivers be guests of this show. My good buddy Marshall Graves. I mean, around here, being a bus driver is like a celebrity deal in Ponchatoula. But you're talking about it. Most of those guys probably signed up voluntarily, excited about it. You're almost like drafted for duty.
I need.
You got told to drive a bus. You didn't choose to drive a bus.
I need the paycheck. So my routine for years was get up in the morning, get on the school bus, get off the school bus, go to the restaurant, open it up for lunch, work prep, work lunch, leave there, get on the bus again, get done with the bus, come back, make sure the restaurant's ready for dinner. And then we, and hopefully if everything went right, I could probably get out of there, 6, 7 o'clock if everybody showed up. And I necessarily had to stay for dinner service, but need to make sure everything was going good for dinner service. And we did that for a long time. The first 5 to 6 years I did it because I had to. I literally did it for about 5 years because I financially had to do it. The latter few years, I started enjoying the additional income. It's nice having an extra paycheck and, allowed us to do more things as a family. And, it was just nice having extra income. When we finally opened up Hammond, I was still driving the school bus, and I basically told my wife, I said, I can't do this no more. I am just beyond thin stretched. I'm running to Independence, running to Hammond, getting on the bus. I told my wife, I said, if I can't replace my school bus paycheck with the store in Hammond, I just don't need to be in the restaurant business. And we stopped driving the bus. I stopped driving the bus.
So at that point, you're working multiple jobs, okay? And you take this bold move into Hammond, okay, and you go in what I'd call the old Crazy Pig location.
Crazy Pig, yeah.
Great location right there by the college. What prompted you to do that? How did you find out about that availability, and how did that discussion go? Because at this point, your wife knows a lot about the business, right? She knows.
Yeah, and now she was.
And y'all have been through some scary lean times. So how did that decision to expand go? What was it like?
She is very, very black and white. Mm-hmm. She says, I need to know exactly what this is going to cost. She made me budget everything, wrote everything down, priced out everything, put everything in pen and paper, put everything on black and white.
So this was the spreadsheet purchase. The first one was like, meet a guy at a fundraiser, follow up the next week, and off to the races. This time
restaurant.
She wants details. Yeah. I like it.
She wants details. She wants details on this one. She wants to know, exactly what it's going to cost to get open.
Yeah.
And, now we're in a little better financial situation. Obviously, we're not making this move if we don't have financial security. We had enough financial security, and we have some money, put to the side, and good lines of credit at the bank. So, right. All these things that we needed to expand our business. And so we did. We made the move over there, found out about the property, had another little restaurant that tried to open up, ended up not opening. The building is clean. It's set up to be a restaurant. It's got a hood. It's got a sink. It's got a non-functioning walk-in cooler, but a couple grand, I can get that running. It's got all the components that I need to be there. So got my buddy of mine, Phil DiMaggio, got him to go in there, and he started working on the building, and he got it looking like a barbecue station for me, man. And we got that up and running. It was a good ride up there. That was a few month long project. It was took us a few months to get it going. Again, it was the first time I did an actual, in the sense of ground up opening. When I bought Independence, it was already a restaurant. It was already kind of set up. Granted, things were it, but it wasn't like a clean slate opening. So Hammond was my first time doing like a ground up, clean slate, empty building. Everything that's in it, I put in there kind of opening, so it was a little different, took me a little more time. And I want to bring in another comment, Jimmy, if you don't mind. I'm going to interrupt you here because my dear friend Marshall Graves, so I mentioned, says he's loving this story. And one, to bring in a bus driver, but two, to bring in a third member of the Outkicked Your Coverage Club. Now, Marshall, you're a cool cat, man. You're tall, you're athletic, you got game. But like I know, your wife's too good for you. So the three of us, we were lucky to marry well. Just picking with you, bud. Say hey to Amy for me. But thank you for watching the show and commenting. So, folks, we're here with Jimmy Gregory, the owner of the BBQ Station. We're learning a ton of great stuff about his family story, from his childhood to driving a bus. And so we're at the point where, he and his wife decide to expand beyond
the Independence location into Hammond. We know that business is now thriving, but like you said, it's a different animal. You know, BBQ Station number one is basically taking an ongoing endeavor, improving it, growing it, building it up, but it's already there. Now you're starting from scratch with a new restaurant. Now, I know you eventually move into Covington. You're also going to open up soon in Livingston. Because we're stretched for time, Jimmy, unless you really want to dig in there, I'm going to kind of gloss over that. But I want to mention it so that our viewers have, you know, an idea for how successful you've been and all the places you've gone. But what the people on my show really want to know about is, tell us about Ponchatoula. I think you're in week 2 or 3 here. Longtime customers like the Layrissons and the Brunos, my family, we were just chomping at the bit. So glad you're here. My wife just transferred, you know, her job from Livingston Parish to Ponchatoula Junior High. So we're all excited you're right up the road. Tell us about that. How did you decide to come to Ponchatoula? Got this great location on the east side of town. We just want to hear about this wonderful restaurant you brought to our community.
Yes, sir. You mentioned Covington. Years ago, me and my wife talked about Ponchatoula before we went to Covington.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to come here. She wasn't really as well versed in what was going on in Ponchatoula at the time. So after up and down Highway 22 a few times, looking at everything that's going on in Ponchatoula, seeing how certain areas of the community is underserved. In addition to all that, we lost the lease that we had on a property in Covington. So as soon as we lost that lease in Covington, I told my wife, we're going back to Ponchatoula. Ponchatoula is where I wanted to be at, 3-4 years ago. I wanted to be in Ponchatoula.
Well, I remember well. I mean, your aunt and I had chats about you might possibly be going to this building or that, and I was hopeful. So when it finally became a reality, we were really excited. So it sounds like you were really looking here for a while for the right deal to pop up. And as God would have it, it pops up when one door closes, another opens. So presumably you've got some resources you can bring from Covington as it closes here to Ponchatoula. And was that able to help you, get open right away? Because it seems like y'all just, kind of snapped your fingers and had the doors open. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot more into it that we didn't see, but
without a doubt was a big help. And I'm not, I got a hardworking crew. I had a great, contracting team in there, but we did a restaurant from start to finish, from the day we swung the first hammer to the day we opened in 33 days.
Holy moly. Did y'all film it? Because that's like reality show material, man.
It could have been time lapsed.
Yeah, Food crazy. Network needs to be all over that.
I mean, again, if you don't know the restaurant business, 4 to 6 months is a normal construction period.
Yeah.
I couldn't even have the license were applied for, everything was done. I was fully legal. I didn't even have the license. I'm like, y'all need to send me the numbers. I mean, if I can't get the license, send me the license number.
Right, right.
I was quicker than the mail, which
hey, look, you're talking to a guy. This is apples and oranges, but some overlap. I bought a house at the beginning of the year. We're renovating it. We're still hoping to shoot for Christmas, right? So construction takes a while.
Yeah.
Commercial construction, restaurant in particular, much more highly regulated than residential, right? You mentioned earlier in other restaurants, you got to have hoods, you got to have equipment, and sometimes stuff's there, but it needs to be improved so it's working, like that walk-in cooler you mentioned. Sometimes it's not there. Like I know at my old location, when they wanted to put a restaurant in there, they didn't have a commercial hood when Paolo's wanted to open up. So they had to add that. So, man, 33 days, that's borderline miraculous, man.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
Tell us about your offerings, because BBQ Station is delicious. Your barbecue is world-class. It's incredible. But you do other things too. So why don't you tell us about what's most popular on your menu and maybe what your personal favorites are, what your kids like, your wife likes, whatever. But just tell us about it for folks that don't have any history with the restaurant.
Ribs and brisket are top sellers. Pulled pork's showing up strong here in Ponchatoula. We find that every restaurant has little things that sell a little more than others.
Yeah.
In general, ribs and brisket are always going to be top sellers for us, followed closely by the pulled pork. For a barbecue joint, we sell more salads than you could ever imagine.
I believe it. They're good, man. And I got to say, you're the only place I know where I can get a brisket salad.
Salad.
But man, your chicken salads are phenomenal. We get them at our TARC board meetings, and I always look forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great salads.
So we sell the heck out of salads. You talking about my kids, what my family eats. Obviously, we eat at the restaurant a few days a week. I mean, we still live independent, so we'll get takeout from our own place pretty often. My son mostly wraps. He likes our wraps.
Yeah.
We usually get like a Caesar wrap with the grilled chicken or blackened chicken, shrimp in it. My wife eats a fair amount of barbecue. She does. She wants the fatty stuff that we throw away. The stuff that's scraped off the top that I can't put on my customer's plate, that's the stuff she wants to eat. I mean, it's literally.
You wouldn't know it looking at her. She's like my wife, man, blessed with a great metabolism.
I get fat looking at it. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's top sellers, and we kind of one of our hook items. Every restaurant has to have a hook. So I had to, we end up with a couple of hook items. Ours is the ultimate brisket burger and our ultimate.
Oh yeah, tell us about that, because that seems to me like a burger that ought to be on diners, drive-ins, and dives. Tell us about that menu item. That's cool.
So we got the regular one, we got the ultimate. The regular brisket burger is a half-pound bacon cheeseburger topped with chopped brisket and barbecue sauce on a dressing bun. So I tell customers, it's like you took a homemade bacon cheeseburger and you took a barbecue sandwich and we put them together. And it takes them a minute to realize what I'm talking about. So it's a barbecue sandwich. Like, no. It's a barbecue sandwich and a hamburger. So it's a hamburger. Yeah. No, it's a barbecue sandwich and it's a hamburger together.
Yeah.
Once they get it, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
And I was like, if that's not big enough for you, we got the ultimate brisket burger.
What's the ultimate? How can that not be the biggest?
That one's going to be a full pound of ground meat, about 10 slices of bacon, whole bunch of cheese, quarter pound of chopped brisket, and it weighs about 2 1/4 pounds. And I'll follow.
Has anybody ever finished one? I mean, that sounds.
Oh yeah.
That sounds like the old. I'm thinking John Candy in the '80s, eating the old '96 or whatever.
So we got the current champ is eating 3.5 of the ultimate brisket burger. The current reigning champion.
Holy moly!
We got a food guy coming through. He just messaged us a few weeks ago. Something garbage disposal. I don't know what his YouTube deal is. I think it might be Doug Garbage Disposal. Something. Anyway, he's coming through in a few weeks, and he's going to try to beat the record. So he's going to have shooting for 4 of them. So I'll keep you guys posted when he comes through.
Oh yeah,
and does that challenge. So yeah,
that's amazing. Well, look, I promise I get you out of here at a reasonable hour, and we're near the end. So before we do that, I'm going to ask you in a bit, kind of an open-ended question where you can share anything you want. But before I do, you've had such success taking this business from your hometown now into many towns nearby. What are your plans for the future? I mean, we're really happy to have you in Ponchatoula. It's a proven product. I know it'll be as good here as it is in Hammond, Independence, elsewhere. But, kind of what are your long-term plans? Because you're a guy who started early, had profound success. You seem really ambitious. What's the future hold?
Well, before I comment on the future, I just want to kind of interject a little bit and say that, I am very fortunate to have done as well as we've done in our business. I've never been a person to think that I've hit the mark, that we're top, we're the best, we're this. I tell people all the time, I say, look, man, our barbecue's good. Come by and check it out. You'll never hear me say I'm the best, or everybody else is beneath. That has never been my style of marketing. It's never been my style of how I treat my other restaurateurs and peers in our community. I think we're all got good restaurants. We all have a wheelhouse and we all do what we're good at. And, what you do great, I may do better. What I do good, you may do better than me. So we all have a strong suit, but it's just humility is very important in this business.
It's comforting to hear that, because I'm in a really ego-based business. Lawyers are often kind of these alpha types that just want to pound our chests and brag. But you're right. We all have our own unique strengths, right? And I may be better at this, but I'm certainly worse at that, and even the best lawyers, if they're being honest, need to admit that. And the same's true whether you're in the food space or the, legal, medical, business, whatever. But I think very few people that have been successful like you have really kind of have that humility and that modesty. So I thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you this. So, the future, what do you think? I mean, what do you envision, for you around the corner?
Currently under construction is Livingston. We have property in Livingston, off Livingston Frost section in Livingston. We bought the old Wayne's barbecue. As we got into the demolition side of the building, demo side of, we're refreshing the whole place. So we started gutting out the inside. We had some structural issues there at the building. So some roof leakage and structural issues, working on that currently. So we're hoping to have that open somewhere around November. It's just what we're shooting for with Wayne's. That'll be our 4th store. The number I've always had in my head has kind of been 7. I'm going to push hard for 7. And at 7 stores, I really want to kind of just sit back and see what happens organically at that point. And not to say I won't have more than 7, but 7's the number in my head. And at that point, I just really want to sit back and, see what happens, very fortunate. I don't answer to anyone other than my spouse. And again, I'll be honest with this. Right. There's no secret money man. There's no guy standing behind behind me. There's no, money just getting put into the account that I don't know it. We are, when I say independent, we're truly independent as it can be.
Independent and independence. That's kind of
you, man,
a nice ring to it.
What you see is what you got. Outside of me and my family, and me and my wife. I mean, not even my family. We're self-funded, man. So, and I guess
cool story.
I guess part of that is what drives me to push hard, because let me just tell you, when your restaurant being successful determines if you're going to pay your mortgage or your light bill, which that's the way it was for a very long time for me.
Right.
You're going to do everything in your power to push and make it be successful. But if you got a nest egg behind you, or you got somebody you can just say, hey man, we need some more money for the restaurant, or we can just keep funding from other sources, or keep asking your partner or somebody else for money. It really changes how hard you work.
Yeah.
Because you got a nest egg there, man.
That's a great point. That sense of urgency isn't there like it is when it's you, your wife, and all of your, eggs in that one basket until it gets going. Well, look, I've kept you long enough. I want to share a few comments that some great folks have left here. Shelly and Errol Smith say 2 great guys. Well, Errol, to you, I'd say it takes one to know one. You're one of the finest men I know. So thank y'all for saying that. It's certainly true. Jimmy is a great guy. Miss Faye Ivaniski, what a wonderful woman. Thank you again for watching our show. She says, Jimmy, that you and your family are just wonderful. And I hear in a separate comment that she's so proud. So thank you, Miss Faye. I appreciate that. Before we go, Jimmy, I just want to close out by asking you, is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers? Anything on your mind, on your heart? What would you like to say to them?
The response that we've gotten from Ponchatoula is been so genuine and honest. People come into the restaurant and they say, thank you for coming to Ponchatoula. Thank you for opening up a business here. And it's just, I get goosebumps thinking about it. And not that other people aren't thankful. Everyone's happy. It's just, right. I feel like how we've been embraced here is just, people are just so happy that we invested money in their community. And, it just means a lot to me to hear those things. And I'm telling you, I've heard it numerous times from so many different people. And it just means so much to me to hear that. And it's really heartwarming.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. This is a welcoming community. And when you've got a quality product, as you do, and you are good people, as you and your wife and family are, we're happy to have you. We welcome you here. And it's exciting because this is a kind of old school town with some families that have been here for 100+ years. But what makes us special is when new folks move in and make investments in the community like you have. And in your case, you're putting your own chips in, right? Like you said, there's no man behind the curtain who's funding this thing. It's an independent business. So we're happy to have you in our little town. So thank you for your time, for sharing your wisdom and your story. To our viewers, thank you so much for being here. I see we have one final last-minute comment. Precision Physical Therapy and Sports Medicine, Scott. Thank you for watching the show. So proud to be your neighbor here in Ponchatoula. So, folks, thank y'all for watching Ponchatoula Live. We'll be back next week. Jimmy, thank you for being on the show. Y'all take care.